Okay, let me give you some money for the bread.
No, sir. I don't want the money.
Come on, just take it. You don't know me, but I am Chief Tunde Amafalian. Everybody knows me around here.
Zainab's mother sent her to buy bread on a warm Saturday morning in Ibadan. The sun had barely climbed high, yet the city was already alive with the hum of traders arranging their goods, the screech of motorcycles weaving through traffic, and women calling out prices in the market. Zainab, 18, walked with a quiet grace that belied her age. Her skin was dark and glowing, her features delicate but mature, and her tall, shapely figure moved with a kind of confidence that drew the eye. Though she was young, she carried herself like someone older, aware of her presence and the responsibility that came with being the eldest in her family. She wore a navy blue mid-length skirt and a cream blouse, simple but elegant, with a small nylon purse clutched in her hand. Every Saturday, she ran errands for her mother, walking the familiar route to the bakery, unaware that today would be unlike any other. At that moment, a sleek black Rolls-Royce Cullinan approached, its engine muted but commanding. Inside sat Chief Tunde Ahmed Afolayan, 64 years old, a man whose wealth and influence were legendary across Nigeria. His large frame was slightly softened by a protruding tummy, yet he carried himself with the authority of a man accustomed to attention. His eyes, sharp despite his age, caught sight of Zainab as she moved gracefully along the road. There was an unmistakable desire in his gaze as he instructed his driver to slow down. "Slow down," he murmured, his voice low. He leaned forward slightly, noting that she was taller than him by a few inches, but it did nothing to diminish the intrigue she stirred in him. Her beauty, her posture, the subtle sway of her hips, all of it pulled him in. The tinted window rolled down, and Chief Tunde's voice cut through the morning sounds.
Hello, beautiful. How are you?
I'm fine, sir, and you?
I'm well, thank you. But tell me, what's your name, fine girl?
Oh, my name is Zainab, sir.
Zainab from? Zainab? Whom Zainab from where?
I'm from Oyo State, sir.
That's nice. I'm also from Oyo. Where do you live?
I live not too far from here, sir.
I see. And what are you going to do this morning?
I see. My mom sent me to buy bread.
Oh, that's nice. How old are you, young lady?
I'm 18, sir.
Are you still in school?
Yes, sir. I'm in SS3. I'm about to finish.
Okay, let me give you some money for the bread.
No, sir. I don't want the money.
Come on, just take it. You don't know me, but I am Chief Tunde Amafalian. Everybody knows me around here.
Thank you, sir.
No need to thank me. Just remember today, sometimes life gives you moments you don't expect.
The car slowly rolled away, leaving Zainab standing on the roadside, her heart racing, not entirely from fear, but from a strange, intoxicating sense that something in her life had just shifted. The 50,000 naira felt heavy as she continued on her errand. When Zainab returned home that morning, the warmth of the Ibadan sun still clung to her skin, and the bundle of cash she carried seemed to pulse with possibility. She walked through the compound gate and called out to her mother, her voice bright with excitement. "Mama, Mama, you won't believe what happened." Her mother, busy arranging bowls of rice and measuring palm oil for the market, turned in surprise. "What is it now, Zainab? Did you waste all your time again in the market?" she scolded, frowning lightly, though her eyes were drawn to the unusual energy in her daughter's steps. "No, Mama, listen," Zainab exclaimed, holding up the bundle. "I was on my way to buy bread, and a man stopped me, a very big man, a chief. His name is Chief Tunde Ahmed Afolayan. He gave me money just like that. Can you believe it?" Her mother's eyes widened and she dropped her measuring spoon in astonishment. "Chief Tunde Afolayan, are you sure, Zainab?" "Yes, Mama, I am sure," Zainab said, her voice steady. She handed the money over to her mother, who accepted it with trembling hands, feeling the crispness of the bills and the weight of the unexpected fortune. Her father, seated at the table reading his newspaper, finally looked up at the commotion, curious about the name. His brow furrowed slightly, but he remained silent, letting the mother absorb the moment. That morning set into motion a series of events that would change the trajectory of their lives. Within days, Chief Tunde, using his extensive network and influence, easily discovered where Zainab lived. He arrived at their compound with the commanding presence of a man used to attention and authority. His steps were deliberate, and when he greeted her mother, there was a mix of charm and seriousness that spoke of a man who always got what he wanted. He spoke of his admiration for Zainab, carefully phrasing his words to indicate respect and genuine interest, while also making clear his intentions. He wished to marry her. For her mother, the proposition was staggering. Her mind raced with images of a life transformed, abundant wealth, new opportunities, comfort and security that had always seemed just beyond reach. As if to cement the promise, Chief Tunde placed a bundle of cash on the table, 500,000 naira, insisting that her mother take it and prepare lunch for herself, a gesture of generosity and authority that left the family in awe. That morning began to change Zainab's life in ways that were both thrilling and overwhelming. The gifts came steadily: expensive clothing, elegant shoes, accessories, and a steady stream of money that allowed her mother to imagine a future of luxury and ease. Zainab, although still young and contemplative, found herself enjoying the attention and admiration she received from Chief Tunde. She could not deny the thrill of the new world opening before her, yet there was a quiet uncertainty that lingered in her mind. To be the sixth wife of a man already with 5, what would that mean for her life, her independence, her own sense of self? Her mother, ever pragmatic and increasingly captivated by the promise of wealth and comfort, became a persuasive force. She reminded Zainab of the things they had long been denied: the beautiful fabrics she had dreamed of, the possibility of attending better schools, the sense of security and stability for the family. Slowly, through reasoning, gentle insistence, and the vivid picture of what life could be, Zainab began to see the potential benefits, weighing them against her own hesitations. Eventually, the family reached a decision that would alter the course of their lives. Zainab agreed to marry Chief Tunde. The wedding was a grand affair, carefully orchestrated to reflect the wealth and status of her new husband. Soon after, she moved to his compound in Lagos, leaving behind the modest home where she had grown up. The compound was vast, segmented into multiple sections for the wives, each household a small domain within the larger estate. Zainab met the other wives, women of various ages and temperaments, and there were subtle rivalries and quiet tensions, but the arrangement ensured that each lived largely in her own space, limiting direct conflict. The daily routines were structured around luxury and leisure, and Zainab, adapting quickly, began to appreciate the privileges her new life afforded her. Cars, fine clothing, trips, and a level of comfort she had never imagined became her daily experience. She traveled extensively, seeing places and cultures far removed from the streets of Ibadan where she had grown up, on that fateful morning when Chief Tunde had first noticed her. It was a life of opulence, of new experiences, of the kind of freedom money could buy, and for a while it seemed as though nothing could touch the brightness of her world. 6 years after their marriage, the world that had once seemed so bright and full of promise began to shift in ways Zainab could no longer ignore. Chief Tunde, once attentive and seemingly enchanted by her presence, had changed. The sparkle in his eyes when he looked at her dulled, replaced by a possessive edge that chilled her more than any warmth he had ever offered. His desire had waned, diverted towards younger women, side arrangements that became increasingly blatant. Yet, despite his infidelities, his jealousy over Zainab remained sharp and suffocating. She was no longer free to move as she pleased. A driver and a personal aide accompanied her everywhere, a silent reminder of the ownership he claimed over her life. It was during a high-profile social event that the first real fracture between them became irreparable. Zainab, eager to reconnect with familiar faces from her past, had seen a former schoolmate and embraced him warmly. The man was young, handsome, and carried a confidence that reminded her of simpler times. She did not anticipate the storm that awaited her at home. The moment they returned to the compound, Chief Tunde's eyes darkened. Words of accusation laced with venom and suspicion fell from his lips, and then came the first strike. Sharp, shocking, a physical reminder that her independence was an illusion. From that moment, the abuse became a recurring pattern. Sometimes it was him directly, sometimes if he was too old or tired, one of his security men was ordered to hold her down while he administered punishment. Fear became a constant companion, and Zainab began to feel the weight of a gilded cage tightening around her every day. The family dynamics in the compound were no less cruel. As the youngest wife, she was the object of envy, resentment, and thinly veiled hostility. The second, third, fourth, and fifth wives found every opportunity to undermine her, their words and actions sharp, subtle, and relentless. The first wife, older, experienced, and secure in her position, did not actively antagonize Zainab, but neither did she offer warmth, kindness, or acknowledgement. To her, Zainab was simply another presence, neither a threat nor a companion. Zainab's world had narrowed to these rigid hierarchies, these unspoken rules, and this suffocating weight of expectations, jealousy, and danger. By the time Zainab reached her early 20s, the disparity between her youth and vitality and Chief Tunde's advancing age, he was now 70, was impossible to ignore. His once commanding presence now seemed frail in comparison to her own strength and spirit. The allure he once held had faded, replaced by fear and obligation. Every interaction reminded her of the cage she lived in, of the punishment waiting for the slightest misstep. Yet, beneath the fear, a quiet determination was growing. Zainab had begun to accumulate money quietly, leveraging the privileges of her life to create a cushion that might one day buy her freedom. Every naira was a step towards liberation, a small act of rebellion disguised under obedience. But Chief Tunde's threats hung over her like a storm cloud. If she ever left, he promised, she would never see her daughters again. He leveraged the loyalty of her family, coercing her siblings into financial arrangements and threatening her mother with police intervention to keep her compliant. Her father remained distant from these manipulations, largely immune because he had refused the wealth, but that made little difference in the daily reality of threats and intimidation that governed her life. The decision to leave was not sudden. It was the combination of years of fear, resentment, and careful calculation. She waited, observing, pretending to comply, masking her plans behind smiles and feigned obedience. And then, on a trip she took with her daughters, a day she could control, she acted. Zainab ran. She gathered her children, her carefully saved money, and fled the compound, stepping into the unknown with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. For the first time in years, she moved without the shadow of a watchful eye on her back, without the immediate threat of punishment hanging over her. The aftermath was immediate and relentless. Chief Tunde's wrath was swift and relentless, though misdirected. He threatened her family, orchestrating arrests and police intimidation to punish those who had supported her in any way. Her brothers were accused of financial improprieties, visiting his estate in search of stolen funds. Her mother was harassed by law enforcement at his behest. Yet her father, distant and independent, remained untouched. His refusal to be bought shielding him from the chaos. The children, however, were with her, safe in her arms, a silent victory that reminded her of the stakes and the courage she had to muster to keep them secure. For Zainab, those first days of freedom were both terrifying and intoxicating. She had escaped the gilded cage, but the weight of her past, Chief Tunde's power, the threat to her family, the constant awareness of danger remained. Still, in her chest, a stubborn flame of determination burned. She had reclaimed her daughters, reclaimed her money, and for the first time in years, reclaimed a measure of agency over her life. Every step away from the compound, every mile that put distance between her and the man who had once controlled her was a victory, small but profound, and it carried the promise of a life rebuilt on her own terms. Despite the looming threats, Zainab's resolve did not falter. For years, she had lived under the shadow of Chief Tunde's power, a gilded cage gilded only by fear. But she had spent those years quietly preparing, saving every naira she could manage, studying the rhythms of his control, and watching for the moment when his attention was elsewhere. She knew that leaving Nigeria would not be easy. He had influence, connections, and the ability to manipulate authorities to track her, but the fire for freedom burned too brightly to ignore. The plan took months to perfect. She enlisted the help of a discreet network of women's groups, organizations known for helping women escape abusive marriages. They were careful, methodical, and supportive, offering advice, resources, and contacts across borders. They reminded her that her children's safety was paramount, and that no matter what threats Chief Tunde could make, they could not touch her once she was beyond his reach. The first obstacle was immediate and intimidating: passports. Chief Tunde had anticipated the possibility that Zainab might flee and attempted to confiscate her daughter's passports. The thought of being trapped, unable to leave, had haunted her for months. But Zainab was meticulous and patient. She waited for the moment when the passports were left unattended, when security was lax, when no one was watching her. And in a quiet, decisive action, she retrieved the documents, hiding them in a place even the most diligent of servants would not think to check. With the passports secured, she executed the next phase of her escape. Flying out of Nigeria under Chief Tunde's scrutiny was impossible. She could already feel his influence creeping toward the airport, so instead, she chose a more circuitous route. Under the cover of night, Zainab boarded a bus bound for a neighboring country, the city light of Lagos fading behind her as she clutched her children close. The night was dark, the roads winding and uncertain, but every mile carried her farther from the chains of her old life. She imagined Chief Tunde's suspicion and frustration, but there was nothing he could do to stop her once she had crossed the border. The neighboring country was a temporary haven, a bridge between captivity and freedom. There, she used the money she had saved to secure safe passage to a more distant land, one where Chief Tunde's power and reach could not touch her. She chose a civilized country known for its protective laws and supported infrastructure for women fleeing abusive situations. Every step of the journey was deliberate, careful, and calculated, a testament to the courage she had nurtured over years of silent endurance. Finally, after weeks of travel, careful planning, and moments of tension that threatened to undo everything, Zainab arrived in her new home with her children. It was a quiet, modest apartment, far from the opulence of her past life, but it was a sanctuary. Here, no one could impose fear upon her, and for the first time in years, she could breathe freely. The sense of relief was profound. She had escaped not only the physical bounds of her marriage, but also the psychological grip of a man who had sought to dominate every corner of her life. With freedom came the challenge of rebuilding. She enrolled in school, determined to equip herself with skills that would allow her to provide for her daughters independently. The choice of nursing was deliberate, a profession that promised stability, care, and purpose. Zainab learned to balance her studies with the responsibilities of motherhood, guiding her children through the trauma of their past and the uncertainties of this new life. She taught them resilience, independence, and the courage to dream, even in the face of past horrors. Each day in her new life brought a quiet satisfaction. She was no longer a young girl bound by fear and wealth's deceptive security. She was a mother, a student, a provider, and most importantly, a survivor. The weight of Chief Tunde's influence had been lifted, replaced by the tangible sense that she controlled her destiny. Her heart, once heavy with dread, now pulsed with cautious optimism. The road ahead would not be without challenges, but for the first time, Zainab walked it on her own terms.